Welcome to Break Free from Corporate, the only podcast dedicated to bringing you business success secrets from leading entrepreneurs with one thing in common. They left the corporate world, became their own boss, and are now living incredible lives. To access previous and all future episodes, visit breakfreefromcorporate.com and subscribe today.
Hello and welcome. Gavin Sequeira here, founder of breakfreefromcorporate.com. Glad you could join us. Today, I'm excited to be talking to entrepreneur Paul Higgins from Think to Act, who's been kind enough to share with us his time and thoughts on this podcast. Now, our aim for this episode is to share his story so that it may inspire you and take action to get out there, make things happen for yourself, and pursue something that you're truly passionate about. Paul, I'm really glad that you could join us today.
Looking forward to it, Gavin.
Fantastic. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to let our listeners know a little bit about you, a bit about your background so they can kind of feel for where you've come from and might even identify with some of the things you've been through. So, folks, Paul has had considerable experience in the corporate world with 18 years at Coca Cola. You probably recognize that as one of the top 3 most recognizable brands on the planet. He was a director there. He held several senior management roles during this time and enabled him to become a major driving force for the CCA company. Now, since he left the corporate world in 2011, Paul has used his skills and expertise towards his entrepreneurial ambitions and set up his own company called Think to Act so that he can help other business leaders remove the blockages that hold their businesses back and to give them a chance to greater leverage themselves through outsourcing and cloud computing. And Paul will come back to that a little bit later on in the podcast. Today, Paul is actively working and helping a variety of businesses and startup communities to grow and flourish. One thing for sure, he's a man on a mission and he's not looking back. Paul, I'm really glad you could be with us today. And tell me if I've missed out anything from that introduction that you'd like to add.
No, look, I think that's a great intro. The only things I'd add, Gavin, is that I'm very much a family man.
Yep.
And I also support some worthy cause. So one is Active Polycystic Kidney Foundation, so Kidney Health Australia.
Okay.
And I'm also a mad cyclist. So they're probably the other things on top of your great intro.
Fantastic. I knew there was more sides to you, and I'm sure as we go through this podcast, we'll get to learn a little bit more about you and how you balance all these things together. So let's just jump straight into it, Paul. Now, clearly, you are passionate about what you're doing today, or you wouldn't be doing this. You left the corporate world at the height of your success, in a dynamic role with so many perks, a great income. Kind of the role that most people who are in the corporate world would actually aspire to or crave to get to. So walk us through and walk everyone who's on this podcast through what was going on in your mind that convinced you to do what you're doing today.
Yeah, look, a great question. I suppose for me, I'd always wanted to get to that, C-suite level, senior executive level. And once I got there, I just, the passion wasn't there for me anymore. I love the company. It had been very good to me. I love the people I worked with. But I read a mission statement every day, my personal mission statement, and it just wasn't aligned to what I was doing wasn't aligned to what I wanted to do in the future. And I really wanted to leave a bigger footprint on the world. And, there's all the cliches, leaving a legacy, etc.
Yeah.
I just felt like it was time for me to move on. And also, I said in the intro about my family, very much a family man. I've got a 10 and a 12-year-old, and I wanted to be home for them more. And the choices for me were really to go offshore to get a bigger role, so to go fully into corporate further, or to, sort of work, average hours then were sort of, 60 plus hours. And
sure.
I just thought that wasn't aligned to my mission. And, I loved learning, and I just felt like there was so much happening in the small business world. There's a lot of companies that might have $1 billion in turnover and have, 15, 20 employees, and the technology now allows you to run a global business from anywhere.
Yes.
And I just wanted to seize that opportunity. So that was certainly some things. And look, as I said, I love the company. It was nothing against the company. So instead of leaving something, I was just moving towards something new.
Right. Okay. And look, I to some degree, I can really relate to what you're saying because as I've shared to you in the past when we've chatted, I've come from the corporate world myself. I haven't done 18 years like you did in one company, but I did do almost 10. And I do know what it's like when you are moving up the ladder, so to speak, and the responsibilities increase. You have little to no free time, and you've got to make a choice. Is this the path that you're going to go down? And what I'd like you to be able to do with us today, Paul, is just help our listeners understand, because a lot of them are probably in the same situation, and they're wondering, can I make this transition myself? You've done it. I'm doing it, and a lot of people I talk to are doing it and have done it as well. But it's not an easy decision to make, and I thought I'd just ask you a few questions that can kind of chunk it down a little bit for people to understand. Is that good with you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now, well, let's just go straight to your Coca Cola experience, because obviously that has been a big chunk of your life. 18 years, a long time in anyone's book, and I'm sure it would have felt almost like leaving a family behind. You would have had a lot of relationships and people you've really grown up with over the years. At what time did you seriously consider taking such a bold step in a new direction? And looking back now, are you glad that you did it?
Yeah, so I, 10 years, so within my friends and my family circles,
mm-hmm.
I was always the guy at the barbecue saying, I'm going to go off and do this and I'm going to go off and do that. And I was always... my friends, because my father had worked at Coca Cola for 25 years. I met my wife there, and the joke was when I bled Coke, not
yeah.
When I was cut, I bled Coke, not blood. Okay. So, I was always talking to my friends, and they were saying, "Look, you'll never do it. You've got a great career.
Yeah,
you're very stable. We could never see you moving." And for 10 years, I just constantly thought about it in my social time, and then I just didn't know what to move to.
Sure.
And to be honest, I had a situation where I was offered a role which I didn't think was the best use of my skills, and I thought, this is it. So there may be no perfect time, and I won't really be able to decide what I'm going to do until I take that step. So yeah. I'm not saying it's right for everyone, but for me it was, it took me 10 years to get to that point, but then I was no better prepared at 10 mark. So other than the fact that I probably reached from a family work balance, I'd probably reached my ceiling, whereas to go to the next level up was going to, mean that I'd have to spend less time with my family. So that was sort of a natural point.
Okay.
But yeah, and look, did I ever think of going back, or did I contemplate it wasn't the right choice? No, because the adrenaline and the passion to create something from scratch just completely consumed me the day that I left. So I never really had a lot of time to look back, to be honest.
Yeah, it's almost like closing one chapter of your life and opening up a door that you've never walked through. It's quite confronting in a way, but it's also a really big relief, I suppose, because you've kind of been holding on to those thoughts for so long. Yeah,
and I had one conversation early on where I said to someone, "Oh, look, if it doesn't work, I'll always go back to corporate." And they said, "No, look, you've got to make this step with no choice. There's only one choice, and that's to succeed.
Yeah,
there is no choice to go back." And I used to do some work at Coke. We had a guy called Andrew Meikle, and he, went around the world interviewing top performers, whether it's Nelson Mandela, top sports people, etc. And he said one of the most common things was when there was no choice. So when you put yourself in a situation where you had to succeed, that's when greatness formed. And
yes,
that conversation with that person, plus remembering back to that, I thought, well, yeah, I've got to put myself in a situation where there is no turning back. I've got to give this absolutely everything, and that's, and depart, even though corporate. I still work with corporate now, and I still do consulting with corporate, but it's not in my path to go back.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And look, I've come across that decision point several times actually, and sometimes it can be quite tempting to just easily step back into your comfort zone. But I remember the day when I finally handed my badge in and handed my phone in and handed my laptop in, and you do all of those little checkpoints and you walk out the doors pretty much for the last time, and everything just looked different to me. That the air smelled different. It was actually quite a different experience. Did you feel like that when when you walked out for the last time? I'm sure you probably remember it quite well.
Yeah, look, so I was very excited about what the future held. So that was important. But the leaving my close friends and colleagues, 18 years, you build some brilliant relationships, and that was, a week post, they were the conversations that I missed. And I'm very fortunate that I still keep in contact with a lot of those people, and I still went and did some consulting back to the business. So
Fantastic.
That was good. But, it was, I remember the first time I went to a network event, and, when I worked at Coke, I often didn't say what I did or who I worked for because, people love telling you a story about the organisation. Do you know so-and-so? It's like, well,
Yes.
there's 16,000 in Amatil alone. It's I don't know everyone, but, you'd always get that. So,
sure.
But then I went into this new environment, and I'd say, I started the first company up called E-Coaching, and I didn't know what I was doing. The other person, therefore, had no idea what they was doing. My family didn't know what I was doing.
Yes.
Who's E-Coaching? It was just, it felt like I just left uni again. It was very grounding, I've got to say.
Yes.
When you come from a company that everyone knows to what? A company no one knows.
Well, exactly. It's a bit of a period of readjustment, and you almost have to rediscover yourself. And just talking about that, I mean, were you able to even plan that kind of adjustment in your mind? Like, did you know that, okay, if I walk out these doors right now, I hold a certain level of responsibility. I have a title. I have people who respect me for what I do. They understand what I do. I can explain it to other people. It makes sense. But the minute I walk out these doors, everything's going to be very different, and my lifestyle is going to change potentially and things like that. Were you able to kind of foresee that, or is that something that just happened naturally as you went through?
I think rationally, it's going to happen, but once you're in that situation, it's not it wasn't what I was expecting. So, we planned financially, and the biggest thing was to get. For me, anyway, the biggest thing was to get alignment with my wife,
yes,
and my kids, and so the things that we were used to getting on a corporate salary would have to be put on hold for a while. And so rationally, I got that, but it was very, very hard when I got out there, and I didn't mind. Like, I remember the first hotel room I stayed in. I actually took a video of it, and it was $70. It was near the Sydney airport, and it had basically the shower, the toilet, and the bed all within touching distance.
Yes.
And I took a video to look back at it in 10 years' time, or look forward in 10 years' time and look back and think, don't forget
where
you left 5-star corporate.
Yes.
Then in a week's time you're in $70 hotels, and it will come back. And I sold some shares to give us a little bit more security, and we ended up implementing phase 2, which was reduced our debt by selling some properties. And I was hoping that the business was going to work quicker. And everyone told me, look, it'll take 3 to 5 years. And I thought, there's no way. Like, I'll get this nailed in a year and a half.
Yeah.
And they were right. Like, in 3 years. I've just turned over 3 years now, and things are going. They've got good signs, but not the income that I expected. So yes, we're still doing things like, no, sorry, we can't afford that.
Yeah.
Which is, which is good. It's been quite grounding. But in the old days, it was like, you'd buy and then think about it. Whereas now, I think
that's right.
about it a lot more than I buy.
Well, when you think about it, at the height when you left Coca Cola, you were general manager, director, like you were very senior in that company. But you weren't at that level in your first year. When you joined, you weren't even there in your second or third year. It took you a number of years to build up to that level, and I suppose it's no difference in starting your own business. You can't expect to walk into a brand new business from scratch and pick up where you left off in your corporate role. The two are completely different. Different worlds, but then different levels of experience as well, and you got to build up to it.
Yeah, exactly. And, your timing, and the more impatient you become, people sense that. So, the roller coaster, I love the roller coaster, but it's really about balancing that emotion. And one day you'll be on top of the world and things are brilliant, and then the next day you'll take a call and, you're down the bottom of the roller coaster. And it's just a lot more, the highs and lows I find to be a lot greater and a lot more frequent than what they were in corporate, and you just got to get used to that and know that will be the case, but that's not the world you're used to in corporate.
Exactly. And tell me something now, with what you're doing today, I don't know how different it was to the type of role that you might have done when you were in Coca Cola, but you're very passionate about outsourcing and cloud computing. And I know you're passionate about other things as well outside of that, but in terms of what you do in your business, those seem to come out as the two big things that you're all about at the moment. And tell me something. Why is that? Are these areas of expertise that you've either developed over time in your previous corporate experience, or is it something that you've just seen as an opportunity in the marketplace as a result of your experience, and now you have the ability to kind of bring it as a service?
Yeah, look, great question. I think it's sort of a combination. One of the books that I really enjoyed reading was Good to Great.
Yep.
By Jim Collins, and he had a simple formula of people, technology, and accelerators around action, and I've always used that. So for me, the Coke company did two things brilliantly well. One was knowledge management. So, you always had someone, if they always sought the best experts in the world and gave you access to that no matter what country you're in. So, and that was mainly through the transfer of technology. So, or technology was the enabler. So there was the knowledge and the technology that really drove productivity and expedited results. So I always saw that from the Coke company and learned that from them. And then the outsourcing piece, I think when we were in corporate, we mainly looked internal for resources. And if we didn't have resources, what we often did was complain that we didn't have the budgets or we didn't have the resources. And particularly in today's Australian corporate environment, it's very hard with a lot of companies can't put up their prices, so they've got to look at cutting costs and cutting training. So, and I was always interested in the arbitrage of getting people from outside of your company that have got great skills but just choose to live in a marketplace where the cost of living's a lot lower. Yes. So how could you use them? So in short, I'd been trained all my life to find experts in the world, leverage technology and put it to practice. What I think the Coke system or some corporates didn't do enough of, which was tap into to experts within leveraging arbitrage, I suppose, lower labour markets. So the theme was always there, but piecing it together, I suppose, became more evident as I worked with small businesses and just saw them struggling to find the right people and realising that there was a better way.
Fantastic. Oh, good. It sounds like, these things sort of came over a period of time and it was the right timing. You sense what was happening in the marketplace. I like the term arbitrage because it's all about finding that right opportunity when you can take advantage of timing And seems like you've actually nailed a very good segment of the market, because outsourcing and cloud computing, amongst a few other things, are hot right now. And people are looking for a lot of advice and help in this area, particularly corporates.
Yeah, and to be honest, how I started with this company was, I was doing coaching and consulting. That was fantastic, and I could just see people drowning in administration, whether it was emails, booking appointments, whatever. It was just this sea of administration that was stopping them from being their best.
Yep.
And I was finding the exact same thing. I went from a team of 150 to one, and I just couldn't get to people because I was drowning in admin. So I looked for a solution myself, and I wasn't happy with what I found, because, the executive assistant that I had at Coke was brilliant, and I just couldn't find that in the market. And I tried Elance, Odesk, that end, and then I tried Australian virtual assistants, which were good but very expensive. And I ended up finding a solution for myself. And as people saw that, they kept saying, "Hey, that's great what you're doing. Can I have that?" And really, it emerged. So the thought was probably always there, but the demand wasn't. I thought I was going to have a coaching and consulting business, but it turned out that no, I'm actually much better providing support to people that want to be coaches or consultants, rather than being the coach consultant myself.
No, look, I think that's great. And, we've talked about this before, but it's something that comes up all the time when I talk to people who are in the throes of making this kind of transition. And I know a lot of people who have jumped into their own business only to find it's actually quite a lonely place, and you just said it before, you went from a team of 150 down to one. And when you're in corporate, you have all the resources around you. You've got people in your team, people you work with. You've got people who can do admin. You've got, you've got IT people. I remember where I used to work, if there were anything wrong with my computer, I just had to pick up the phone or drop it off at the nearest lab or something like that. And it would come back magically fixed, 2 days later. And I didn't have to think about it. But when you're on your own, you don't have these resources. At least most people don't. And how did you find, immediately when you started on your own business, having no resources, what did that make you do? And how did you cope?
Yeah, look, great question. So I think the first thing was around that, the team that I left and the people, which is really important to me. So I went and found meetup groups.
Okay.
So that was great. We're a lot of like-minded people, and I would sort of have one meetup a week that I'd go to, and I still continue that. So I love that. The second was joining some really good forums. So Small Business, Big Marketing Forum, and there's other great forums out there that you get to meet people both face-to-face and through online.
Yeah.
And then I just sought global experts. So if I looked at my Skype, I would say that, I didn't use Skype in corporate, but my directory would have been, other than Coke people, it would have been, 80% Australian. Whereas now, I go through my Skype and I've just got experts from all around the world. So, I'll have a Skype or a go-to meeting every day with someone who's an expert in their field, so that I can learn from them, and I can also potentially plug them into my client base so that they can add value to my clients.
Yeah, brilliant.
So there's some of the things I did around the people side, and then I suppose the other side of it. So there was the people side, and then the other part of the question.
The people side, and I suppose just having, resources in general. So that could involve people. It could involve, having access to tools or different, mainly people, to be honest. But, when you're in a big, large corporate environment, you have that. So you've got different departments like finance and accounting, and you've got, IT and all these different resources, technology, etc. When you're on your own, you are literally that person, or you either have contacts that you can rely on outside.
Yeah, well, that's right. So there's two other key things I did. One is I made sure I had a coach. So I've had 3 coaches in my 3 years.
Okay.
All have been fantastic, all brought a different skills based on where I was in my growth.
Yep.
And they opened me up to a great network. And then from a tools perspective, we've got 220 cloud-based tools that we've now compiled. So a lot of that was my own research, but I basically used two companies as the linchpin. So one was Apple, so I just went everything Apple,
yes,
just for their customer service, and to have someone to pay $100 or $99 for Apple Care and have someone I could call any time over the 3 years was brilliant. So they were basically my IT department. They were great. And then the other's been Google, with Google Apps for Business. So leveraging off those companies allows me to have individual flexibility, but I know that I'm dealing with a big company that I can rely on. So that's how I've gone down the tool path.
No, excellent. Well, yeah, look, I think you nailed the two probably biggest tools that most of us use today. I almost can't imagine a world without Apple or Google. I don't know what we did before that, but let's fast forward now to the present. So we know where you came from. We understand your journey, and boy, you went through some interesting periods of adjustment. So describe your lifestyle today, Paul. What gets you up in the morning? What's a typical day like for you?
Yeah, great. Well, as I said before, I'm a keen cyclist, so I'll ride 6 days a week, depending on weather. So that's what I do first thing. I get up 5:30 and I go for a ride, and that's very social as well, because I might ride with 50 guys, have a coffee afterwards, and so that's great. And a lot of them are small business people and also in corporate, so there's a really good cross section.
Great.
Then I normally spend time with my kids when I get back from the ride and take them to school. So that's been fantastic, and in nicer weather I ride them to school, etc. So spend time with them. And then I've got I use a little app. It's on an iPhone called Way of Life.
Way of Life, okay.
And it just I just list 12 things that I know if I do those 12 things each day, it's going to lead to me being happy, and hopefully, most importantly, my clients being happy. So I just list those 12 things, and I've got a routine that probably takes me 45 minutes each morning, where I just go through, I go through a daily reflection. I go through a daily focus app, which is what I'm going to do for the day.
Yep.
Then I normally listen to a podcast. So that's sort of my development time. And then the rest of the day is spent really on three things. One is content, creating content. Two is around new business meetings. And three is around consulting.
Right.
And probably the change that I'm just about to do, but I found really hard, is to stop working. So I would coach my clients on making sure there was good balance.
Yes.
And having good sleep, etc. But I was working sort of 11 o'clock most nights. I would get my kids to bed at 8, and then I'd work from sort of 8 to 11 most nights.
Yeah.
Normally with client work. So I'm now, or from today, I'm actually implementing where I don't work after 6 o'clock now at night unless it's really important, just to make sure that I'm just letting my mind get off work for a few hours, because when it is your business and time is money, it's very easy to get sucked into this, working 13, 14-hour days.
Actually, that's a really, really good point. I know that when I was in corporate, and I would hate to have to work back after hours, and sometimes you would, you just have to get presentations done, or you'd be traveling and you needed to work on things, and you couldn't help it. Here in your own business, you get to set your own ground rules. And I really think if you don't set ground rules, by default, you'll end up working twice as hard as you ever worked in corporate. And remember, you're starting from a low base, so you've got to, I think I really like the system you're putting in place. Gee, I feel I could learn so much from you, Paul, because 6 o'clock is when I really start cranking it up for myself, and we probably don't finish till around midnight. But yeah, it comes down to discipline. So maybe I have a bit of work to do in that area, for sure.
Yeah, and look, I one of the reasons I left corporate was because of I've got a health opportunity with my kidneys. So I've got a kidney and liver disease. So
right.
My whole thing was spend quality time with family, build a business that makes an impact on the world, but also allows me to work 2 to 3 days a week if I'll eventually go to kidney failure. So, and I went to my specialist or professor the other day, plus I went to a Chinese doctor, and they both said, look, it's great that you've changed careers and you've theoretically done all the right things, but you're actually probably working harder than you ever have, and, this is not good for your health. So, remember why you left corporate. So you need, you're near the point where you're getting the business on its feet. Now you've actually got to back off and make sure that you protect yourself. So it was just a bit of a wake-up call because, I work from home most of the time. So, it's easy just to, your wife's sitting there watching TV. Oh, I'll just go off and do a quick 15 minutes, and before you know it, it's 12 o'clock. And,
yes.
Because I love what I do, and I just can't stop it. It's really hard to stop it.
And the lines are very blurred because you're working from home, and because you love what you do, you don't notice the time. And sometimes you even forget to eat at regular hours because I don't know if you're probably more disciplined than myself and some people I know, but that can be an issue as well because you're working from home, it's your own time, and I guess you can do what you like, and that unstructuredness can come to your detriment.
Yeah. And look, I facilitated a program for a company called Franklin Covey, which is sort of a leader in productivity training around the world, and they just had one of the sections was called, the 5 energy drivers, and it spoke about eat, sleep, relax, connect, and move.
Right.
And it had leading neuroscientists talk about the importance of those 5 energy drivers, and you can't shorten one of them. You need all 5 to perform well. And I suppose, particularly the sleep one, that's the real killer. So for me, I know that I've got to get quality sleep, and and if you're going to bed at midnight and up on the bike at 5:30, there's not a lot of time.
There's not a lot of time in between. Yeah. And let me ask you a different question, because this is more around mindset and training and things like this. And I know when you come from a corporate environment, they're very big on professional development, and you go through a lot of training, and there's courses and things that you end up doing. When you go into your own business, how do you educate yourself, and how do you keep your skills relevant and up to date? Because really, there's no one driving you to do this except yourself. So how do you do this, and why is it important to focus on this?
Yeah, no, look, great question. So firstly, I went and looked at the skills that I needed and got formal training. So, I didn't have the cash flow, so to speak, but I made the investment. So I went and got accredited as a coach by the Institute of Executive Coaching and Leadership. I went and got accredited in Herman Brain Dominance. I went and did a couple of other accreditations. So I really invested in myself.
Yep.
And that was through the help of external providers. So that was sort of phase one. What I do now is just consume podcasts, a lot of podcasts. So I've got my suite of four to five podcasts. I listen at 2 times speed, so an hour podcast I chew through it in a half an hour.
Perfect.
And that's how I get a lot of my content. And then I also follow blogs and some of the LinkedIn groups, etc. But the biggest one for me at the moment is podcasts. There.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's that's what you're doing is this great podcast, and I think it's just a brilliant way to learn.
Yeah, look, it's increasingly becoming more and more popular because you can listen to it whenever you want, wherever you are, in the gym, in the car, on your way home from work. I mean, the great thing is, I really hope this will reach a lot of people because it's sharing information that's going to be useful to a lot of people. I think it's fantastic that you do that as well. Now, what are some common issues, Paul, that you see because you work with a lot of organizations, and you've been through this many times. What are some of the common issues that many startups have when they get into business? And if you had to pick one or two or three things, what would you advise business owners who are looking to get into business or looking to start up something, just so they don't fall into these traps? And I know there are many, and I don't expect you to go into a lot of them, but if there were one or two in particular, like what would you advise someone who's about to make that step out of corporate?
Yeah, no, look, great question again. So one is family alignment. I spoke about it before, but really get alignment with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
And double the time frame that you think. So, I thought a year and a half. I should have said 3. So I think that's absolutely critical, because, they're so important in this roller coaster with you.
Yes.
And so for me, that's definitely number one. Number 2 is get mentors that have, walk in the shoes of giants, as they say. So, I picked different coaches and mentors because they'd had experience in small business where I had no experience at all. Mm-hmm. So I think that is critical. And budget. If you're looking to leave, make sure that that's in your budget.
Yep.
The third one is outsourcing. So when you're not earning a lot of income, you'll think, oh well, I can, it's just easier for me to do it myself. And it's not just because I'm in the industry, but it really is, what's the opportunity cost of you out there driving revenue that might earn you, say, $120 an hour versus getting someone to do something at $25 an hour for you.
Yeah, good point.
And I just see people, doing things they shouldn't be doing, and that stops them doing the things that they really should. So, look, they're probably my top 3. And my sort of quote, another one which I often see is people wanting to be perfect rather than progress.
Yeah.
So my key thing is just make decisions. Like a good or bad decision is only known in hindsight. So just make progression. It may not be perfect, but at least progression. And this whole lean startup test and apply, I think, is absolutely critical. And I see a lot of people coming from large corporates, they're used to saying, I'll get back to you in a day, or I'll go away and think about it, which is what you did in corporate. Whereas
Correct.
in a small business, you don't need to do that. If you have enough facts and intuitions right, and it's not going to break your company, you're far better to make a decision than to defer one.
Yeah, look, excellent advice. I mean, and the great thing is you can make quick decisions, because you don't need to take a day or 2 days or 3 days. Look, I think those are really good points for people to note, so that they don't fall down this trap of not knowing, because you can prepare for all of this stuff. Paul, what we're going to do now, this is actually the exciting, well, not that the whole podcast hasn't been exciting, but this is actually an area that I like, because it's quick, but it's going to just reveal a few things. You've kind of touched on one or two of them already, but I'm just going to ask you 5 quick questions, and whatever comes to mind, just jump out at us. It's kind of like a rapid response. We're going to do over 2 minutes. You ready to do this?
Yes.
Okay, so I know you've already touched on this one before, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What is your favorite mode of learning? Do you watch videos, audio, books, seminars, or do you have, a bit of a combination?
Yeah, no, look, podcast for me is my favorite by far.
Okay, well, I think you went through that quite a few times over. No, but that's good. Okay, so because everyone has different ways that they consume information, I'm glad you've got yours. What about the biggest thing you love about being your own boss right now?
I think it's choosing who you want to work with. So choosing the people that are got good value alignment with you.
Yep.
And you actually choosing to work with them. In corporate, that's a little harder, but in your own business, you can set a criteria and meet that a lot easier.
Fantastic. Yeah. And what don't you miss from your corporate job?
Look, I think it's the non-value adding tasks. So, pick a figure, but it might be 60% of the time you spend on things that, with internal politics or there was something that didn't actually add value. And I was often told, like, slow down. Like, all we've got to do is achieve our budget, because if we work too hard, it'll make it a rod for our back next year. Or,
yes, yeah, I've heard that.
That's the type of stuff I don't miss, and probably just that speed of decision making, which I said before. So, there's some brilliant people in corporate, and I'm finding a lot of corporate people are actually looking to start their own business up on top of their job, just because they want that freedom to make decisions and actually do something at the end of the day that they know they've really added value, whereas it can be a little harder in corporate. Yeah,
no, excellent point. Do you have a favourite role model or hero, and why would that person be that?
Yeah, look, I think it's a combination of two people, and so one is Steve Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I just think his ability to learn things from others and then apply it is exceptional, and his ability to focus. I actually was fortunate that one of my clients worked for Steve Jobs for 10 years as a direct report.
Yep.
And he shared a lot of stories with him, and I've taken those into my business. So Steve would definitely be one. But probably the part that I didn't like was around his leadership style.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to have a combination of Steve and Branson. I think Branson's got a brilliant leadership style. So taking the best of both of them would create a great role model for me.
Yeah, two very different, eccentric, brilliant people, really. And now, what do you see as the next major trend after outsourcing and cloud computing?
Yeah, look, I think it's a continuation of those, and I think outsourcing in the past has been about, labour arbitrage, and, I think that's brilliant, and I'll continue to do that. But I think it's about finding experts in the world that can help you. So to me, there's two choices. You can either be the best in the world at something, or you can find the best in the world, and I think that's what's going to happen. So, there's platforms like Clarity.fm where you can go and buy an hour of someone's time, or buy someone by the minute, because they're the expert in a certain field. So I think the historical thing was, someone's got to come and contract for me, or someone's got to come and work for me within a corporate environment or a small business environment. I think that world's going to be replaced by just who's the best in the world and how can I go buy whatever time I need from them. It might only be an hour of their time.
Sure.
And go access them. I think that will be the next phase of outsourcing.
Fantastic. Well, finally, Paul, fast forwarding to the future now, and the journey for yourself is still very new. You're only 3 or just under 4 years since you left corporate, and I know you have an amazing amount of experience, but you almost have a lifetime still to go in your own business. Where to from now? Where's this journey of yours leading, and what have you got planned, and what's your vision for what you want to achieve?
Yeah, great. Well, I've got two real passions. One is helping startups, Australian startups in particular, perform on the world stage. So that's one thing I want to do a lot more of, is how do I take great brands here in Australia and help them actually perform, whether it's on an Amazon platform or whatever the platform may be, but do it differently to what they currently do. And the second is sport. I've got a high passion for sport, so I want to create the most trusted sports administration company in the world. There's great outsourcing, use of technology, and outsource within corporate. I just think sport hasn't evolved to that, and I want to help speed up that evolution. So They're sort of the two key things that I want to focus on moving forward.
Wow, well, you're going to be a busy guy, that's for sure. Well, listen, Paul, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and you've given us some great ideas, certainly for myself, for all our listeners that can take that in and work with. So we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Great, thanks a lot, Gavin. And if anyone wants to talk to me direct, they can just go to thinktoact.com.
Absolutely. I was actually going to just say that, but no, I'm glad you got that one in there. And Paul, listen, thank you very much, and all the very best to you.
Great, thanks, Gavin.
Cheers. If you like this podcast and would like to understand a little bit more about what was just discussed, then you're in luck. Simply head over to breakfreefromcorporate.com, and we have a fantastic bonus gift waiting for you to download. All we ask in return is that you leave us a review on iTunes and or Stitcher, whichever you use. And lastly, help us share this podcast around with your friends, your colleagues, through Facebook, Twitter, Google+, or LinkedIn. We truly appreciate all your support, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode of Break Free from Corporate. Once again, to access previous and all future episodes, visit breakfreefromcorporate.com and subscribe today.